Okay, so far in preparation for our engineering CPD day and our session on mechatronics, we have taken our header pins and we have soldered them onto our all-in-one robotics board. So that's now ready for connecting up and using during our modules. We've also come along, taken an ultrasonic sensor, and we've taken our jumper cables, we've soldered those on, but they are now ready for connecting to our robotics board when we need to use it. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is our little screen. The little screen is plug and play. There's a slot on that, and when we go to use it, that's a simple case of plugging in there, and indeed if we wish, we can further connect that guy into our all-in-one robotics board. So we can daisy chain those as we need to. So the last little bit of prep that we need to do is on our NeoPixel strip. Now, our strip of addressable LEDs is going to either come cut into a strip like that, and again, as this is taken from a much larger roll, you may be fortunate enough to get one that was at the beginning or end of the roll, which has wires pre-soldered onto it. Either way, it's going to be the same length. You may need to prep this side here. Now, if you happen to have wires on the end of yours, on my one here, at the start of the roll, I've come along and I have deliberately cut the 3 wires to different lengths so that my crocodile clips don't short against one another when I go to use those fellas to connect directly to my microbit. So I can use those guys to hook in there exactly as I want. Okay? Now, what we are going to do is we're going to look at setting this guy up from the very beginning and hooking him up with some jumper cables so that we can connect that directly to our board. So there's one I prepared earlier with the 3 wires soldered on and the jumper cables ready for connecting to the header pins on the all-in-one robotics board. So when I'm prototyping, I can use these and push fit straight on very quickly. So I'm going to take my board here, I'm going to take my strip and I'm going to have a good look at it. Now, this strip uses 3 wires, just like a servo. Each one of these LEDs is individually addressable. Each one of those can be controlled, its brightness, its color, totally independently from everything else, and that means we can do a lot of fancy animations on this strip that we can't do with ordinary LEDs. Now, every single one of those can be cut off into individual LEDs if you want. Also, you can add on more. The important thing to note on these is the little arrow that points on every LED. That tells us the direction that the signal needs to travel for the LED to work. When the microbit sends out a set of instructions for the LEDs, it must start here at the beginning and go in the right direction. Otherwise, the strip will not function correctly. So looking at my strip here, my arrows are pointing to the right as I look at it. So I know that this is the beginning and I need to have 3 wires going to here. So if I just turn them round so that I can see, and we'll zoom in nice and close on this guy. There we go. So we have the voltage, we have the ground, and in the middle we have the data signal that's going to drive it. So to hook this up, the crocodile clips that we were given tend to not work very well. If we come along and try and clamp these guys on, they don't make a secure connection. They may connect, but they tend to slip off and wobble and be very unreliable. So what we want to do is we want to solder on 3 wires onto this. Now to prep that, I'm going to clean this down. So those little copper pads that are there, I want to give them a little bit of a clean. So I've just taken a little bit of wet and dry paper here, or a little bit of fine sandpaper will do the same job, and I'm going to give this guy a little clean down that when I come along to soldering, I can solder with relative ease to my strip. Any plastic film or any contaminants that are on the surface will be wiped off, and I know I'm working to clean copper. Okay, so there I have my strips ready for a little bit of solder. So again, I'm going to take my soldering iron and I'm going to put 3 little drops of solder. I'll start from the middle. There we go. There's the first one, and I'll move to the outside. I'll move to the side nearest me. There we go. Okay, so I've got 3 little drops of solder ready for working with. Now again, if you happen, like me, to have wiped off the labels, it doesn't matter. The labeling follows through on all of them. So I know that the side nearest me is the ground. I'll just point using this. So there's my ground connection, there's my voltage connection, and there's my data connection. Okay, so let's look at soldering this on, and we'll just drop back out here slightly. Again, I need 3 wires. So on my set of jumper cables here, I'm going to take 3 off the end, and I'm just going to peel those guys off down along here. There we go. And I'm going to look at soldering them on. Now I don't need the full length of that. I'm going to cut off round about here somewhere. Now the reason I'm going to do that, I'm just going to use my snips, my pliers. There we go. Okay, so my male-female jumper cable I've cut in 2. This side here with the female end I'm going to use to hook up to my strip. This side here I'm going to keep. The reason I cut that a little bit further is, rather than wasting the end of it, I find these really useful for when I'm trying to hook up motors, like this one here for example. On the ends of that I've used these spare ends, so now when I'm prototyping or putting something together in the workshop, I can use these to push in there, and it gives me a good reliable connection. Okay, so looking at my NeoPixel strip, let's zoom back down here and have a good look at it. Here is our 3 wires. Here are our 3 wires, in case there are any English teachers listening in, and we're going to solder these on. So I'm going to start off by just peeling back slightly here, and I'm going to strip these guys back. If you happen to have any heat shrink tubing in your workshop, now is a good time to put a little strip of it across here just to stop those wires from fraying. So I'm going to cut 2 tiny little bits, about maybe 13 or 15 millimeters each, and I'm just going to slide them across here. Okay, that'll stop my wires from fraying out. So let's look at soldering these on. I'm going to strip this back very slightly. I don't want to take too much off it, and I just want to expose enough wire that I can solder this on. Okay, so that's just enough that I can now put a little dab of solder on that, and it should go on and work okay on the NeoPixel strip for me. So I'll just put this guy in here to hold him in place. Again, just a little drop of solder on the end of it. Okay, and they're ready for soldering on to the strip. So let's look at soldering them on. Again, working from the middle out seems to be easier. So I'll work from this one here. Okay, and then I'm going to work to the one on the outside. That's okay. And lastly, on the opposite side. Okay. And now I have the 3 wires soldered on there, ready for hooking up. And again, I put a little bit of heat shrink on a few moments ago. I'm going to slide that guy down to the end there, just to stop them from fraying. And up here at the top, I'm going to leave roughly about 35-40 millimeters, just that I can fray those wires back and spread them across the board when I go to hook them up here. I have a little bit of flexibility as to where they need to be. So I'm going to leave them there like that, and I'm just going to get my heat gun and I'm going to heat the 2 of those so that they shrink down and stop my tube from moving around. And there I have my NeoPixel strip ready for using during my modular NeoPixels.